Nino Hinoguin. Nino Vincent Hinoguin. Yeah. Hey guys, Mike Taylor, aka Battleship Cobra here, and we have a little treat for you today. Nino Hinoguin, I hope I'm saying that right, reached out to me via LinkedIn and wanted to interview me about being an SAP Business One consultant. We did the interview. The video, we had issues with the video, but the audio turned out great. I think the interview went really well. So we wanted to share it with you. Thank you very much to Nino. You could check him out at nino.battleshipcobra.com to see his LinkedIn. Once again, thank you very much, Nino, for the opportunity to do the interview. And here it is, guys.
Our guest for today, our pilot episode, is Mr. Mike Taylor, Mr. Battleship Cobra himself. So he's a senior SAP consultant at Forgestick Incorporated. So he's from Canada. So he's one of the SAP influencers. And he's also a Udemy instructor. So you might check his channel. He has to a total of 11,497 students already. And summary, active SAP software consultant working with SAP Business One and the SME space, developing business intelligence and business processes for his clients. And then these are his courses, so you can check that out. And by the way, he has one free here. It's working remotely. It's very timely during these days.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I didn't make it for it, but people seem to like it for it. It's good timing. I mean, bad timing. Nobody wants to do that if they don't have to, but it's free, so check it out.
All right, so you can check also his other courses. That there's a bestseller also there for Crystal Reports, and he has also a YouTube channel. You can check that out. A lot of these videos helped me going through with to navigate some problems I had with my projects. So there you go. You can search Michael Taylor or Battleship Cobra. You can look for him. There you go. All right, Mike. So how to navigate this? We'll start with brief history, like the questions I showed you.
Okay. Yeah, these are great questions. By the way, I guess as you're going through things, you don't like. I didn't really reflect on them, but it's a nice. It's nice to have them beforehand too. So a brief history about myself. I've always been interested in technology, and kind of unbeknownst to me, I really love business and business processes too. And so when I was going to school, I realized this, and getting into technology, they mentioned SAP, but they kind of called it like a cult, and they were showing these kind of they were showing these kind of videos of like people at these big conferences and stuff, and how they, one sec, oh, card full, and sorry, I've got my camera turned off there. And so I kind of, that was kind of my first exposure to it. So as I was getting ready to leave my diploma program, I had been looking at job offers, and this job offer came up, and it started talking about business processes, but it was basically an implementation consultant. And when I went to look at that, it stuck into my head so much. It wasn't SAP. But I applied for it even before I was done school, and I was super duper excited about the roles and responsibilities that it was talking about, and the processes of mapping a business onto a software. So I was very excited about that, and I was there for about 9 months or so, and the VP of sales ended up approaching me. I really liked my job, and the VP of sales left to start an SAP Business One partnership. And turns out it was the smallest one in Canada. It was started with three people. And so he asked me if I wanted to join him, knowing that I like to do implementations and I could kind of tackle technical challenges. So he started I had heard of SAP. I knew kind of about, my dad worked for TELUS. So TELUS is it's a Canadian telecommunications company. And so I knew they were using an SAP, the big one. So I knew
The
the
big one.
name and the brand, and I thought, you know what, I really like this guy, and I like the concept of this. I like what the software is all about, an ERP system. So I took my kind of implementation skills, and we started as Canada's smallest SAP partnership. I don't know if it's the smallest one ever, but yeah, 3 people to start.
All right. So when you come in on board, do you have like a sort of training, or how does it goes before your first project?
Um, so we were small and growing. They basically just, I think we almost had a deal immediately that we were going to do.
Mm.
And so I was doing my level at the time. It was level 1 and level 2. So I did the level. I was working on the level 1, which was what's the online version now. So it's all it was just videos, just hours and hours and hours of videos. Everybody's
The
probably
e-learning. Is that the
yeah
e-learning?
yeah exactly. So it was I don't know if it's exactly the same as it was now as was then, but I was doing the e-learning, and then an opportunity to do the level 2 just came up, and we kind of had, I don't want to mention any names, but we kind of had some inside help with people that knew people at SAP. So I just went to level 2, and they said, "Don't worry if you're not finished all the e-learnings." I was finished the level 1 e-learnings, but I hadn't done the test yet. I hadn't passed the test, and so we go to level 2, and I went to Philadelphia. Shoot, I'm at Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. I'm somewhere in the States, Philadelphia, that the North American headquarters. And I did my
Okay.
training, my level 2 training at the North American SAP headquarters. Just unbelievable building. And so I had barely any hands-on experience with it, and I already got jumped into the level 2 training, which repeated some of the level 1 training. It was hands like
Okay.
I can't remember who was doing it, but
Like, what's the difference?
yeah,
Like, is it like TB 1 300 or 1 200, and then the level one is level,
it's been so
or
long, but the level 2 is basically supposed to prepare you to go into the streets. So
okay,
I had just barely like finished it. I could do an install, I could configure some stuff. I knew barely how to use the DTW, and then I was shipped off to Edmonton. I'm in West Coast of Canada. Edmonton's kind of more in the center. So
okay,
I went to my first project, and yeah, I mean, like honestly, I wasn't prepared, and it was a crash and burn situation. And I was there for like a couple months, and I was focusing on the wrong things. And I mean, I'm gonna say it's a learning experience, but yeah, it
yeah,
was a total crash and burn. And I was up
yeah,
till like 1 o'clock in the morning every night. Like I was trying to get the DTW working, and it's really rough at the time. So what I was not prepared. I learned a lot, but I was not prepared for my first implementation.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. So I think we have like the same path. Probably consultants just go on board to try to find how to make it work along the way.
Yeah.
Um, so um, that comes into the next question. So since then, how do you improve yourself? Because I think with your videos right now, you're like an expert level. So what's the process? Do you have like schedules or something? Do you have like
Yeah.
what's the process?
Um, I think I think I think even since failing in the beginning, um, I still love I love ERP systems. I love mix. I'm right in the middle of a business minded person and a technical minded person, and
Mm,
I just let my obsession drive me in different directions. So even though I was losing, let's say, I felt like I was losing. I was learning so much, and if they
mm,
asked a question, I'd say, I don't know, but I would like obsessively dig into it. Like I would get into it,
mm,
I would figure it out really like enough to become an expert. And so I kept on just doing that. And what do they say? An expert is somebody who's made every mistake you can make in a narrow field. So
mm.
that's probably me. Like I've made all the mistakes. So now when you ask me, I look like I know what I'm talking about, but I've really just made every mistake possible. So I really take away the questions and I answer them as thoroughly as possible. I don't want to have the second time somebody asks me something I don't know. So I dig into it. I play around with it. I'm fortunate enough to have the test systems, but I would really dig into it. And as I've gone on, I don't really schedule anything, but if a need comes up, I
Mm.
make time to look into it and train myself and really dig into it. And I've been very fortunate that working for
Like
Fortescue,
simulate, and then
yeah, to
yeah.
really answer the question. So, if
Mm.
somebody asks you something about serial numbers and some certain thing, you dig into it, and the next time they talk to you, you're like, oh yeah, I really dug into it. I tested it back and forth because SAP's documentation isn't always 100% because there's so many
Yeah,
versions and things.
yeah.
But like something like even the B1IF and a lot of my videos stemmed from that obsession. Like I needed to implement the mobile solution, and I guess me being driven to do that, I dug into it like I could not stop working on it. I had no clue what I was doing. There was no documentation really at the time. There's more now, and there were like little spots and pieces, and I had kind of, I was just driven by obsession in that regard. And now I make time for myself to do like little challenges. So with B1 Up, I'd be like, I want to replace line loop with a stored procedure, or like something comes up, I block time out to dig into that and to give myself a little bit of time where I'm not doing support calls. And if I feel like I value that time, and Forgestic values that time, where I'm
Mm.
not pushed so hard into doing timesheets and billable work, which I still do and want to do. But if I take a couple hours to work on a little project or something, I feel like
Yeah.
that gives me a mental break. It helps me up my skills, and I feel like it's something that I'm passionate about that keeps me interested. Like B1 Up again is a great example. There are so many little things you can dig into in little areas. I just kind of go with a drive and block out some time where I don't just flip around to support calls. So that's probably the way, rather than anything. I'm not a really scheduled learner
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned B1 Up. B1 Up is a great add-on. Do you package it with the SAP Business One and you sell it?
Yeah, I mean, now we are like I truly believe that you're not using SAP Business One properly unless you have B1 usability package. It's it's a pretty big thing to say, but it is
Yeah.
that useful that, yeah, we bundle it now with everything. We didn't really before, but it's so
Mm.
useful that we are now. Yeah. And most
Yeah, yeah.
deals will sell with it. Yeah, most deals, even with the dashboards alone, like it's easy sell.
Yeah, because it's user friendly. Like I remember before with B1 Up, you can change the fields, move the fields
Yeah,
before it's implemented in SAP. And now,
yeah,
yeah, it's B1 Up did it before SAP
yeah,
implemented it. Yeah,
yeah.
so it's a good thing.
Like B1 Up is B1 Up. Honestly, if they should, like, I don't want to say one should buy the other one, but like, if SAP bought B1 usability package, like that is what should be in
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Like
yeah. I'm
it's
with
what
you on that.
it's
Yeah,
like the emailing, even like SAP's implementation of the form UI, I won't use it. I feel like you can do everything you need with the UDF sidebar. I don't like the UDF sidebar, but I also don't like the placing of UDFs by SAP's user interface designer. Like I can't handle that the little boxes aren't like lined up nicely.
yeah,
I just I can't, and they shift. They'll shift by a pixel.
yeah.
I'll just
And then I get a problem if it's remote desktop. Just like just
yeah,
the field just stuck, yeah, and moving.
yeah.
So so that comes in with the next question. So you speak about selling also. So are you involved in the sales process? And then how's the transition to you as the implementer?
Yeah, again started out in like a three-person organization, kind of like two sales and me. So if something needed to be demoed, I was the guy that had to do it. And it really just helps you to push your technical skills. So
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
always had a role being in such a small partnership. And then eventually Forgestic purchased us, and I'm the guy on the West Coast. So any demos on the West Coast, any sales leads on the West Coast, back in the
Mm,
day, I would get them. And
mm,
I would say I can speak okay, so it's easy for, like, I can communicate all right, so I can talk to the customers. I would say I'm not a great salesperson. I'm a little too honest, maybe. Like, I'll be like, no, this is a terrible fit. Like, I don't want, like, because I have to remember that I'm going to be the one implementing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
never said to anyone that I would be terrible, that it would be a terrible fit. But I wouldn't say I love nurturing leads and everything, but I did do it for quite a while, so I got to see how customers react. How to, it's like, Mike, you need to simplify your answer. Like, you can't, sometimes a yes and no answer is just a yes and no answer. And
Mm,
people doing demos with sales people, they're kind of like, they're like, Mike, can it do this? And I'll be like, well, under certain circumstances with this, or having, I need to dig into it more. They're like, look, can you just say yes or no? So I learned that mode of communication. Then I kind of moved more to pre-sales. I would do demoing, and demoing
mm,
is a real challenge. I love the mini blueprinting challenge of a demo. So I was always
mm,
happy to do that, but I think my real love is support and implementation.
mm,
So I've tried deliberately to take myself out of sales because I feel like me not loving following up all the time with prospects, it hurts the sales process. So somebody's
mm.
more suited to do that than me. And I
Yeah.
don't do demos per se, but I support other people doing pre-sales to build B1 up stuff, and to just discuss different processes with people. So I'm still somewhat involved, but I've deliberately taken myself out of that. It's not my strength.
Yeah, all right, all right. So talking about that, so you're more focused on the implementation, how to deliver the project, and then so how's the transition? So from the pre-sales and sales, once it is closed, how do you do it? How to make sure that all those promises in the sales process is transferred to you extensively or transferred to you well?
In a way, I treat it like a clean slate. I
Mm,
mean, you speak to the sales employee, like, you speak to the salespeople that you work with, and you need people that maybe they're not technical, but they
mm,
know, like, what, they're not selling things that don't exist. So
yeah, yeah.
and in that regard, I'm usually hearing about the project a little bit before the kickoff. But when
Okay.
we do the kickoff, they're going to list out basically what is in scope and what's out of scope.
Mm,
And from there, I really just start from that point. So I know, here's the overview. They want to integrate this. They're going to do this add-on. They work in this industry, and there's kind of like a checklist of points that we have with Forgestic, a little document, like a handoff. And then
mm,
we do the kickoff, but it's pretty basic. I like, again, I like to start, and this leads into the next question about blueprinting, but I like to start with a clean slate. I have an idea of what was sold, but
mm.
I don't even necessarily follow up with the pre-sales guy
Okay.
exactly what was done. So yeah,
Okay,
clean slate.
because some of clients just say, "Oh, this pre-sales promised me this. Like this can be done or that." How do you deal with it?
Well, I'm fortunate that we are scoping and selling things that are very possible now. I
Yeah,
think when the smaller you are, you're trying to make every deal work, even to the detriment of your organization.
yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. And I feel like that blend of, like, being honest and saying, like, it's a law firm, dude. Like, stop talk. They're not a great fit. It's not that like they have no inventory. We don't do. We can't. So
Contracts.
yeah, they're excited about it, and the customer's like, wow, a solution for me. And I'm like, just tell them it's not a good solution and look for another lead. Like, So back in the day, it was more of like a round peg, round
In a
square
square
peg,
in a
square peg, round hole,
square peg.
square peg, round hole. Um, but I've never had to really implement a system that was such a bad fit that I couldn't handle it. In terms of like promises, I really try to be straightforward with the customers. Like,
Okay.
this, and for me, I feel like customers like that I say I don't know, and I feel like it builds
Yeah.
trust. So
Yeah.
if they say, "Hey, what about this and this and that?" I don't just try to make some long thing. I'm like, you know what? That's a great question. I honestly don't know. I haven't run into that. Let me take it away and I'll get back to you. And then I get back to them. So
Okay.
if it's something where they're like, oh, okay, it can do this, it can just, let's see, something like, oh, it'll be so easy to pull information from my bank account and then auto match everything. It's like a feature of QuickBooks that has come up. And it's like I'm like, it doesn't. We have mapping. I just have to be straight up. I'm like, we do mapping of bank statements, but it's kind of a custom thing, and we'll need to look at the documentation for it. It's not something like a phase one thing unless it's in scope with what we've said. And so I need to start setting the expectations of the customer right off the bat.
Yeah.
If it's something that I can do, and great. And if something I can't, I want to be transparent about it and say, like, these are the real options. Because again, being the consultant, and again, there's a question later, but I do follow along my customers as they go. I have to be straight up. I can't pass the buck to anybody else. So
Yeah.
just being straightforward, set the expectations. I have been lucky to have nothing that's like, hey, it's gonna, like, I don't know, land an airplane for you, and then it doesn't. Like, I've never had that much of a gap. But
Okay.
be honest
So
and straightforward.
do you have like developers or something like you can say, I'll ask my developers if that's an add-on or something that can be done?
Yeah, yes, we have a team of developers and they're awesome guys. I want to say that I don't like custom SAP Business One add-ons. I
Mm.
don't. I really and truly believe that I try to avoid them. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
sorry guys, but if that's the other thing that B1 Up does, is it avoids, like, if
I'm
you
with
need to add
you.
a checkbox. Like, so I work with developers that will help me write the .NET code for the things I want to do, the DI API calls that can be
Mm,
triggered by B1 Up. And so you
mm,
can run raw code from within B1 Up, and you can eliminate a lot of things. So unless you need custom forms, custom screens, we have a lot of those too. Me personally, I try to avoid those custom add-ons because it's such a barrier to upgrading, that unless it's
mm.
something
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really important, I could you could usually find a workaround for. And typically I know if they're going to need something really custom, because when we do the quoting, we'll have already talked to Mario, or who, head of programming, or whoever we would have talked to. So yeah, it's yeah, what was the question? I try to avoid
All right. Try to
developers
avoid
in
a
that
bit.
way.
That
And
that's a good tip.
well, and I will know in my mind, I'm all right where I can say B1 Up can do it. Like, say they're like, oh, we need to close these documents, or adjust an SAP field programmatically. Well, you can't do that with like a post transaction notification. So I know I can do a DI API call with B1 Up. So as long as B1 Up is there, I can know in my head.
Okay.
So you kind of need to know, like, if it needs screens and it needs some really custom stuff, and tables and things stored that way with multiple screens and setups and things, then you can kind of start to see that's custom development. And then if it's like, we need checkboxes and adjustments to forms, and we need some
Mm.
basic functions, and that's kind of like a B1 Up thing. So I'm usually the one making the calls on what I need.
All right. All right. But do you have also like a project manager or something aside,
Yeah,
or you're
yeah.
the project manager yourself
Well,
for your
uh,
projects?
yeah. Initially, I was doing everything. So I would, like, literally get the lead, do the sale, sign the contract, do the implementation, manage the projects, do
One man
everything.
army.
Yeah, so I've done that, and it's not my favorite thing to do, but at the time I was doing everything. So again, fortunately now I can choose more. But the project management, the question is, who does the project managing?
Yeah.
I having project managers now, we actually have a group of them with Forgestic, so it's really nice that they can take away and manage the schedules for us and do those. I don't want to say like it's not productive consulting wise for me to be doing status reports
Yeah,
for
yeah.
times and stuff. So just in the last 4 or 5 years, I guess, maybe 3 or 5 years, we've had a dedicated set of project managers who can do that function and keep us all in line. You know, the customers in line, keep the
Yeah.
developers in line, keep the everybody in line. So I have done it. Now I am fortunate enough that I don't have to do it all the time, but it's very, very, it's key. It's so critical. The best projects I've done have been had great project managers.
All right. All right. So we'll proceed now to to my next question, which is what's your approach on blueprinting, and can you share to us your mindset when you design the whole system?
Yeah, the blueprinting is my favorite part, besides maybe building. But
Mm.
I feel like a strong blueprint
Yeah.
equals a great project.
Project. Yeah.
And so I really like we have a set of adapted forms from the Accelerated Implementation Plan, the AIP from SAP.
Mm.
And I basically do the workshops. I
Okay.
come in and like basically now I kind of apply what I've done before, and we run through all the different sections of this spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet maybe has 200 questions on it or something like that, and it kind of some of it's redundant, but it is aiming to cover all of the bases of what we're going to do, and I
Okay.
try to
Sorry.
not.
Sorry. Did you build that spreadsheet? Did you build that?
It was a colleague that built it. It was
Okay.
I don't it's not the original SAP one. It's just adapted, and we've kind of like through Forgestic we've kind of we've used it, but it just captures, yeah, like all the different areas that we need to do, and
Okay.
I end up kind of like through the different workshops breaking into what I like to call the 80% scenarios.
Mm.
Don't let the prospect try to tell you that you have to cover something that's not important. And what I mean by that is people a lot of the times will get so bogged down in the 1%, this happens. And then you're like,
Yeah.
well, how often does this happen? It's like, I don't know, twice a year. And I was like, what? What? I've been talking about this for 4 hours. And it's like, you don't need, who cares? Right. So I try.
The
I don't
Pareto
try.
principle, you like 80/20
Yeah.
rule, you're
Yeah.
applying it.
Yeah, exactly. Pareto analysis. Yeah. So just don't, you have to, obviously I try to be funny and real. I'm not that straightforward. Maybe I will be depending on how open the customer is, but I just try to keep them in like, let's get the 80% process done and let's
Yeah.
nail that.
Yeah.
And we're definitely
Okay.
going to discuss things, but don't let that tiny little thing. You want the strongest processes possible, and you want to steer them away from their own I don't want to say stupidity, but it's kind of like they've done something for so long that they don't even think they can get rid of it. So it's
Yeah.
my job to say, do you need to do that? You do it twice a year. Like, can we roll it in? Like, do you need 75 discount levels for every customer? Or can is 17 and a half the same as 15? Maybe you got 10, 15, 20. I realize that for the 10 years you've been running, you're a small business, but you need to step it up to a medium mindset. You need to get into a true medium. And I feel there's a process between going from truly small businesses, they do anything, they make everybody happy, they want to
Mm.
do everything. And when you reach a medium, you have the luxury of starting to refine what you're doing. And I think of it as like
Yeah.
the Amazonization of your process. Like
That's a
you want to
great
be able
tip.
to do, you want to do one order to cash the same way you do 10,000, and you want it to scale. You cannot rely on individual users. and I try to help push people in that direction. And when I started, I was so system focused that I would be trying to push them into like these little really picky UDF things, and I've learned over the years that you need to breed compliance of the users. So it might not be super 100% perfect for that report you want to build later,
Yeah.
but your users will comply, and you have buy-in from the people using it every day. And so that is, you need compliance, is what I go for with the robust future-looking process. So I listen to them, I ask the questions, what can I simplify? And then I
Mm.
map that into SAP as I'm listening to them in my spreadsheet. And then I
Okay.
will go through, we have a spreadsheet template, and I'll take every point and every piece of that spreadsheet and I go line by line. I throw it into the different sections. Some of them are just standard like wording of like what it does, and then some have
Okay.
special notes. So I'll go and I'll digest that spreadsheet, and then I will put it into the right places. I always do a sales process in quite great detail because I think that's kind of one of the biggest things. So I'll say, here's the quote process, here's the order process, here's how
Mm.
we're going to deliver, just over, not click by click, but like, a sheet comes in, it'll be paper printed to the back. They're not
Okay.
going to be using that, right? I'll get pretty specific so that really when I look back, I see what we have agreed to. And the more detail you go into there without getting too crazy, the better your implementation is going to be. You can build it to that. If the customer says, we were going to do it this way, I can say, we weren't. This is what we agreed on. And that doesn't happen because you're really aligned when you spend more time doing the blueprint.
Okay. So how long do you spend this blueprint phase? How long?
It depends on
In
the
average,
size. Yeah, well, I mean, I would say 3 to 5 days.
3 to 5 days. Okay.
So
And then that documentation that you put all your notes in there, yeah, you're gonna print this and sign that off, or just formality say, I agree to this documentation. How does it goes?
yeah, don't it we don't typically like I'm not typically going to get them to sign that. I would like them to, but usually we'll use the AIP checkpoint signature thing. There's like
Yeah.
a sign off, and it'll say you approved. Lately, we haven't really been doing that. It's been more of like a verbal or an email, like yes, this is it, and we'll go back and forth. So I'll send them
Okay.
my first draft of the blueprint. They'll review it. I have questions, and I just use Microsoft Word's comments on the side. They'll go through and they can either reply to my comments or they can add their own. We'll go through them one point at a time until everybody's on the same page. And then usually by the end of that process, they'll have looked at it enough that they are aware of what they're signing. And if I don't know if they don't and they're not paying attention,
Yeah.
I hope they are.
Yeah.
So they should
All
be.
right.
They usually are.
Yeah, they should. All right. So now after blueprinting, we now go to the building. How you call it? Building? We call it configuration.
Project
Um,
realization.
d- yeah, project reels. So you do it yourself or have someone else, and then you check it.
I I'm not really I'm more of like a lone wolf, let's say, in that regard.
Okay.
Like during school, I'm not good at delegating anything, and
Okay.
I'm kind of like obsessive compulsive of the little details.
Mm.
It's not productive that way. So I've learned a lot more now how to accept other people doing things and promoting them doing it their way, and accepting that there will be differences from the way that I want things done. And honestly, that's really been tough for me.
Yeah,
I
it's
really,
quite.
yeah, I love working with a team, and now Forgestic has built a great team, and we have people that I can literally, they'll ask me, I can assign them something and they'll do it, and I'll come back and I'll be like, wow, that's amazing. Like I just feel like some teams don't work that way, where I come back and things are half done, or just not done at
Mhm.
all. And then I'm like, well, why did I try to explain or delegate this to you? I might as well have done the entire thing myself. So I think earlier in my career, every single point of every single thing, I don't want anybody to touch it, and I would do every single thing myself. But now with a strong team and clearly
Mm.
defined roles and skills,
Yeah.
it's very possible. So I'm fortunate that if I do need help, I get help, and we work together well. People, we know our strengths and weaknesses, and we come together, and certain people want to do certain things, and we want to do certain things, and we align, and that's magic.
Yeah. 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 So those new teammates you have, you trained it yourself also?
Some of them, yeah, the one, well, I don't want to say the ones that I've training is tough, because if you don't make this dead time, you could think of it as dead time, but I
Mm.
think of every second I spend helping a new consultant get better is an investment in me not having to do some function again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we have a shadowing process at Forgestic. So when a new person's onboarding, um, they could get assigned to me, and then they'll have questions. I want to see them put in some effort. I want to see them do some work on it. But if they bring me good questions and it's clear that they are working hard and that they are invested in the solution there, I will do anything that I can to help them, and I'll spend as much time giving them background information, and we'll do examples in crystal reports. We'll talk through it, and they call me throughout the day. And even though I'm losing maybe billable time spending that time with them, Forgestic enables me to do
Mm.
that and to invest in those people, so that now I can just boom. I'm like, boom. Could you do this? You feel like doing this? You have time to do this? And they're like, yeah, let me do it. I love it. And I kind of know what each individual person likes to do and not do,
Mm.
and then that again, it works really good. It's a good synergistic approach.
All right. That's good. So still with the realization configuration. So how do you do it? Like upload master data and then up until such time that you say we're good to go, let's go UAT.
Yeah.
So can you share your process there?
So what I do is I usually reverse break down my blueprint. So
Mm.
right now I'm doing one. I just break my blueprint down. I take a copy of the final documentation that's been signed off, and I just go section by section and delete it. While
Mm.
I'm doing my workshops, I also have a second document that I do that's a to-do list, which
Okay.
clearly outlines the UDFs that I need to add to what
Okay.
forms, and specific functions or buttons or little things that stand out that I'm going to add. So if they're like, oh, like we need a quick way to see batches on a
Mm.
sales order or something, I'll be like, oh, button, and I know I'm going to have B1 up. I could say, make a button with
Yeah.
an SQL report with batch details that this customer
Mm.
has previously purchased, right, or serial numbers. So I'll
Yeah.
write those up. So I have my big blueprint. My blueprint
Okay.
has, financial years, when the end of the financial year is, the account structures. It has, details, and in some cases it'll have UDFs listed there too. So I just go
Okay.
step by step, and it's like, oh, mobile, not in scope, delete that section, and it'll be like purchasing quotes, we're not using them, okay, hide that from the
Okay.
menu. So I just basically digest back my blueprints and build everything to support that document. When do I know I'm ready? I know I'm ready, I guess, when I can run through the process and it makes logical sense to me, training
Okay.
them training them the sales order to cash process that has been put in from the workshop. So I look at the steps and I say, okay, if I were a user and I was walking and I had to walk through this, does this make logical sense from that user standpoint in the industry that
Yeah.
they're in? And then, yeah, obviously we will go do testing and start UAT.
So when you have your when you build the system, do you have master data from the client already, or Just you ask 10% of their data so that you can play around.
It honestly depends on it depends on a couple of things, I guess, like the volume of the customer. Like if they're a high volume new customers, like
Mm,
I'll import usually whatever I have, but
okay.
we also encourage the customer to clean up their master data. So
Okay.
I don't want them to just dump the garbage that they have that maybe they don't want it, right? So I usually go chart of accounts, GL account determination, well, basic settings, chart of accounts,
Mm,
GL account determination. Then I start bringing in either customers or items. Then I usually do
mm,
vendors last because you need to make a bunch of things in there. And so yeah, if they're saying to me, I say, well, what's the volume on that? And they're like, we only add maybe 10 customers a month. Like maybe it's like they don't add new customers all the time. I'll try to do as much as possible. And then
okay.
a lot of the times they'll say, well, we'll just manage it and we'll add the ones that are there. It'll be a good opportunity. Sometimes I'll end up re-importing those, but high volume ones, I just don't believe in the customer's capabilities to do data transfer workbench. Honestly, I try not to sell that to them that, hey, DTW is going to be so easy that you'll be able to do it. I've had, to be
Internal
transparent,
error.
yeah, I've had one and two customers that have really embraced it so much that they were able to figure it out themselves. And a lot more people who have said, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the import. I'm going to do all the conversion. And then, nothing happens for a week. And I'm like, it's probably better that I just do it anyways, because I have a very
Do
particular way of
you
getting it.
walk,
Sorry.
sorry. Do
Go ahead.
you walk through those templates?
No,
Do you
it's
walk
useless.
through? No.
Useless.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't waste your
yeah.
time. It's so, man, I feel like um the value where I provide value, I want the customer to just trust me that they would rather have me do it than them, and make it
Okay.
really clear. And honestly, my crystal reports and my SQL reports, besides helping people who want to know, it helps people to know that they don't want to know. And if they go and they try to take my crystal reports course and they're like, I hate this and I don't want to do it, then they'll be like, I'll be like, look, I love this and I do it every day. Just, the value, it gives them the value. It gives them the confidence that them paying me is worth the money. So same with the DTW. And I guess
Yeah.
I could scare them with the DTW templates, but you are going to spend so much time trying to explain to a customer who's never done it, the DTW templates. It's useless. It's so pointless. Just get them to give
Mhm.
you whatever they have. Don't get them to adapt it at all. Just say, give me everything you have and then I'll adapt it. And because you have to split there's a whole process in splitting it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it just makes more logical sense for me to do it. So I won't typically share that with the customer. It's just confusing to them.
All right. All right. Fair enough. So after you build a system, you're confident, and then you're confident that when you walk it through, it's logical, and you will ask them to test it for user acceptance testing. So
Yeah.
how do you do user acceptance testing? Do you walk them through, or do you have like user manual? How do you do it?
That's a great question. I'll usually jump in the UAT as my initial training, actually.
Mm,
So I feel like the customer can't even really train unless they have some knowledge of the system. So I'll
mm,
do basic navigation for everybody that wants to do it. So I'll do a couple of cycles of basic navigation, which I meant to do it in a video. I might either do a video or a course on it just to get
mm,
people oriented. Like, this is a database system. If you don't push update, it won't update into the database. If you leave without pushing update, it will not
yeah,
remember. It'll warn you, what
yeah.
add mode is, what find mode is, what OK mode is, how to print, where the icons are, how the modules are organized, how copy to works, how the golden arrows work, how to manage their windows. So a lot of times I'll start with that as basic training. I'll say the system's ready. Let's do basic training. Then I'll break down each of the individual processes with the people that need to do it. So I'll go sales. We typically do a train the trainer process. And so we'll
Okay.
take the higher level training people. Sometimes we'll do end user stuff, or we'll include more end users. So we'll train the trainer, and in the train the trainer, because the blueprint was so specific, I'm very close typically, and then they'll clarify certain requirements. I'll make certain assumptions as I'm building, and then they'll be like, oh, this scenario isn't exact, or we need to include something else. And that really gets to kick off the UAT in a real good way, because it gets that discussion, and it gets them in the
Yeah.
system using it rather than saying, here's a spreadsheet, go test it. So I mean, beyond that, there's a little bit of variability. They should go through at least the blueprint and do their order to cash process. So I encourage them to do the order to cash process and to follow what I had done in the training. So that gets them moving on it. Because if you don't give them any context, they won't be able to do the testing themselves at all. And
Yeah.
hopefully that gives them a little bit of time. They have their real data in there. And I encourage them to do a few orders that came in that day and see if anything comes up, or see if it works properly, and simulate that based on what the blueprint says. If they have additional scenarios that they want to do, that's very proactive and that's wonderful. Most people aren't going to do that.
So do you allow that? Do you allow, or
Yep.
you discard? All right.
I would very much encourage it. And we have, obviously, the accelerated implementation plan has a set of scenarios. I don't necessarily like those. I just want them to do a day in their lives. Like, take a real order, and that's the real test. Take a
Yeah.
couple real orders from that day, enter a couple real POs, and if possible in the UAT, challenge yourself by using real orders, or get a real order prior to your UAT, and go through entering that. And I guarantee you, little things are going to come up. You're going to be 80%. You're going to get some of the 20%. Don't get thrown off too much. Don't feel discouraged. You're going to take one step in front of the other, and you're going to solve those things. Don't see it as this big issue. Just the way that I think about it is, if a human can do it, the system can do it. If a human can take the little steps to do it, because the customer is going to try and overwhelm you, like, oh yeah, we manufactured this, and like all these parts come in, and we have to get all these parts all together, and then they have to come and they land in the shipment yard, and they do all this stuff. It's like that as a consultant, you're like, you get overwhelmed and you think, I'm never going to do this. But in reality, every step has a step, and between every step there's some time, and a human is doing it today. System can do it. So don't get overwhelmed by these 20% cases. Just
Yeah.
note them down, solve them, and in some cases you're going to have to do a workaround for a weird edge case, and that's how it goes. Some things are just weird.
Yeah, that's a good one. If the human can do it, the system can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, once you're done with the testing, do you schedule also second cycle or something, like second cycle testing after, if there are change requests or whatever
It depends, I guess, on how
issues?
much the gaps are. Yeah. It every cut. I don't have a one, like, I don't have a really cookie cutter approach. I do it kind of based on, like, if I just nail it and they're happy and they feel like they can walk away, and maybe we record those UAT sessions. If they feel that they can walk away and I got it, which that's my goal, then I don't necessarily need more training, but definitely I will redo the trainings, or maybe I will come back and demo, like, a new scenario that wasn't thought of in the original blueprint. But I try not to have to do that. Hopefully, I'm able to lean on the blueprint as my resource for the final documentation. Even if it's just a small amount of documentation, it still gives them the overview of how they're going to approach that sales process or that purchasing process. And if I make a big change, I will go back to the blueprint and I will rewrite and put notes in it. So
All right.
yeah.
All right. Okay, so we're running out of time. It's already
Okay.
8:50 here. So now, after you did the training. So by the way, with the training, can you um, you just walk them through? You flash the screen, and then they have their workstations that they can copy what you do. How does it goes?
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And if I'm at a desk with them, or I'm in an office or a conference room with them, that's great. And that's what I would aim for, is having people walk through, say, order entry desk people walking through and do it, or at least the head of, like, say, order entry. That is an amazing way to do it. And given the opportunity to do that, some people can't take the time out to do that. At least you'll have the super user. So it depends. A lot
It
of the
depends.
times, a lot of like, I'd say 50-50 would probably have some involvement in some of the steps, and that improves the retention a lot.
Mm,
But a lot of the times, honestly, it is either it's me basically demoing each step and
okay.
following the blueprint. So we'll say, okay, based on the blueprint, this is what it says. So even though they might not necessarily do it there, they'll have notes, and I like to
Okay.
record it too. I'll record what I'm doing,
Okay.
and then they'll have the blueprint that they can still go and look, and they're like, okay, I know how to do a sales order. Okay, oh, I pull up the business partner. I remember that training, and then they get some familiarity with the system. So I don't have really hard and fast rules with that. It also depends the number of people. How
Yeah.
much the users involved in training are in testing and development, stuff like that in the blueprint. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
but
yeah.
that the trainer you mentioned a while ago. That's I
Yeah.
agree with you. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and then they own the processes themselves. I like the more the
Yeah.
customer owns the processes, and if you start hearing that train the trainer, that super user, if you start hearing, I try to keep my mouth shut at the end, and I want
Mm,
to hear that super user start to answer user questions. I want to hear them.
yeah.
I want to hear somebody say, "Oh, how are we going to do this?" And if that person says, "Oh, you know what? We've already talked about this, and this is what we're going to do. It's going to be a workaround," then you're on
Yeah.
the right track. If they
Yeah.
don't say anything, and they aren't able to answer those with any sort of capacity, then you might need to train them a little bit more. Maybe they're not admitting that that they're not comfortable, or maybe they do need more training. So they need
Mm,
to own that process. That's the best case scenario.
yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
So now, after the training, so is it same with you? We go right straight to the migration, or we call it pre-go live. How do you call it?
We just I just call it go live. I guess,
Yeah.
like, using the a in the case of a larger project, the accelerated implementation plan as a pre-check go live,
Yeah.
pre-go live checklist, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a starting point. I feel like you have a sense of, you've covered all your bases, you've digested that blueprint, you have your super users running, you have your regular users are comfortable, all the software is set up. You can't do any more tests, and you're confident that you've nailed it. Then we
Mm,
pick that date, and we kind of have that logical discussion of, like, when are you going to close your year? When can you give me a trial balance that's audited that you're going to use? Do I have to do a Delta business partner load, or are there a lot more items that have been added? There's always, like, a little bit of negotiation with that, rather than, I would say, kind of a templated approach. So again, depends on the size of the project, how many people are
mm,
involved, how many add-ons are involved, what type of business people are in. Some are really chill, and they don't add a lot of customers, and they're very ready to go, and we're all just aligned. We align, and we're all
okay.
like, let's do it. So it's a little bit of variable. I don't have a standard
Yeah.
process.
All right.
Yeah.
So do you have like a sort of rule like we will not go live if our trial balance is not equal or it's not it doesn't balance? Do you have like sort
Yeah.
of that thing? Like if my total in inventory audit report doesn't tally with the balances in inventory or sort like that stuff. Do you have like sort of the strict rule or something?
Well, yeah, if it, like, I mean, it's tough. Like, obviously, if they're $10 million off, and they're trying, like, like, I explain as we're going, what I
Mm.
need. So, I need a balance sheet, and I need your accounts
Okay.
receivable, your accounts payable, and I need that blown out to match with
Mm.
your local currency, foreign currency stuff. And
Yeah.
I need those details in a spreadsheet, and then I need your inventory, and I need a breakout of your inventory by SKU with the price, with the costs. And
Mm.
being able to say that, they people are mostly able to produce that, and if they have a small variance, the accountants are aware of that, and it's not my responsibility. If you guys are okay with I don't know, I think the highest variance I had was $40,000 or something on
Mm.
7 or 10, I don't know, several $1 million. And they were aware that they had just not been able to track their inventory properly. And
Yeah.
so that's a process for them, and now they have specifics. So most of the time I'm going to say it's very close. But if
Okay.
honestly, if I show up on like a Friday and it's like, okay, I'm about to load all these things, and like you don't have anything for me, and you don't have you're doing your inventory count it's failed already, you're not going to
Mm.
be able to get it done, and I'm going to have to do this on Sunday at like 10 o'clock, that's 0% going to go. I mean, I'm not going to do it.
Mm.
It's not
Mm.
positive for anybody. you
Yeah.
know the 6 P's of business: piss poor planning perpetuates poor performance.
Yeah.
And so if you're all working together too, so they can give you a sense of like if they have to do a last minute inventory count that they wanted to do, just give it some space and have a realistic expectation. Like, can you guys really do this in 2 days? And sometimes they
Yeah.
can't, and you have to wait a week. And honestly, I'd rather wait a month and reapproach it. And
Mm.
you're going to lose a little bit of knowledge, a little bit, but rushing it is going to be so damaging in a lot of cases that unless there's some reason to get it pushed through,
Yeah.
I'm not somebody that's rushing. I don't want to be rushing to get
Yeah.
it done.
So you're gonna suffer when you go live, and then
Yeah.
there's a lot of issues. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
much more comfortable saying, you know what, I'm sorry. As much as you want to start it, it's a fun new toy. We need to reassess, and we need to get those numbers nice and clean.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
So now, speaking of go live, by the way, Mike, it's already what, almost 9 here.
Yeah.
So do you want to cut it down? You have your meeting or something, or you want to finish this thing?
I'm okay. Let's do it. Let's
All
just
right. All right.
yeah, we'll just, I got
All
extra
right.
time. It's 5, yeah, it's 6 p.m. my time, so I'm just
All right.
uh,
Appreciate it.
yeah.
All right. So now, when we go live, how do you go live? How do you support? Are you at home, or what? You're on site? How many days or something? Can you walk me through?
Yeah, I will try as hard as possible to be on site. I don't think unless there's a team, I feel like there needs to be somebody on site. And
Mm. Mm.
you just kind of, like you brace for impact. And I don't want to say detach, but
Okay.
you have to detach. There's going to be stuff coming at you, a lot of stuff, and you can't be too hard on yourself in that moment. That's kind
Okay.
of the like test of being a real consultant, I think.
Yeah.
And it's what you learn over time. You cannot take the things that are happening personally, and I'm really like, I take things personally. And you need to triage what's happening, and you need to have a very clear and organized to-do list that you're working on, and you're going to have to put in a lot of hours to do it, and you're going to have a lot of people asking you a lot of questions, so you have to keep your patience up. And
Yeah.
little things are going to go wrong, or little processes are going to be not there. You need to figure out what's truly going to impact that go live and what's not going to impact that go live. And you need to, again, think about your compliance. You cannot forsake, you can't try to tell the customer one way or another. For me, I need to kind of relax my standards for certain things in the
Mm.
system. Sometimes when rubber hits the road, it's
Yeah.
not going to work, and it just doesn't work, and you have to pivot quickly. You all agree on it, and then you kind of do it. So the hardest part is, for me, it's just not that fun, is loading the balances. And then you show up on that Monday, and just be
Yeah.
prepared. Get a good sleep. You're gonna just get prepared to be just hammered with questions and to have some setbacks initially. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
You might have a setback initially. Don't get down on yourself.
Mm.
Keep focusing on that thing. Remember, just take that ball of all the crap that you have to do, break it down into individual steps, prioritize and execute. Look at
Yeah.
which ones are the most important and which ones you can do quickly, and do those, and just proactively seek out the problems that are happening. Go visit those people. Do not sit in the conference room. Do not try to avoid the
Yeah.
people. Do not try to avoid things unless you absolutely have to get something done, obviously. But don't try to get in there. Try to say like, hey, is there anything I can do?
Yeah.
What can I help you with? Is there a little thing I can adjust? It's like, oh, perfect. I'll go do that. The crystal report, a little thing, some fields overlapping. Okay, perfect. I'll go do that. Um, so I feel like being proactive like that, not only does it give you like a good relationship with all the users, they'll start to trust
Yeah.
you and see that you know what you know. And if you don't know, you're going to take it away and you're going to work on it. You're going to discuss it. And we probably do that 3 days to 5 days to two
Mm.
weeks, depending on how intense. I don't think I've ever had 2 weeks of being on site, but definitely 5 days is standard.
Yeah.
Being there with the customer, and maybe Thursday, Friday, you're fortunate enough that things are getting quiet for you, and you're working on some printouts and some reports that maybe are just additional nice things. And that's the beautiful part. You just kind of brace for impact, and that's when, I kind of think of an implementation or go live as like taking off of a plane.
Yeah.
You're kind of taxiing there and you're accelerating the engine, and once it kind of takes off and you don't have any massive objections,
Problem.
um,
Yeah.
then you're up in the air, and that's when you're like, you know what, little things are going to show up, but I can handle these, and I have help, and I know what to do, and I keep doing it till they're happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
it's
there goes the fulfillment part. And then when you
yeah,
see them happy with your system.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and
so
honestly, again,
uh,
there's going to be setbacks. This is the biggest thing.
yeah.
Like, it's going to be setbacks. There's going to be things they expected that they never, they didn't even talk to you about, and you're going to get a little bit of negativity no matter what you do. Okay, it's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
People don't
Yeah.
like
That's
change.
right.
People
Yeah.
don't like change, and they're going to focus on you in some cases, that you're this person that came in. So be as positive as you can, be as helpful as you can, be as straightforward as you can, and you'll get through it. And and even if they say, "Hey, this was a real tough process. I like it." A year later, they're like, "You know what? This is great. We're using it. We're happy. We're developing."
Yeah. 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 That's good. All right. So now after your like 5 day on site, do you have also your offsite? Do you like ticketing system? Like you log the ticket if they have problems, and then you get the
Yeah,
ticket, you support.
yeah. I like initially. I like just emailing me directly or emailing the project team, like whoever is
Yeah.
the consultant. So I
Okay.
I leave hopefully having a positive relationship with the customer. I don't feel like I've walked away from an implementation where they just disliked me. Um,
Okay.
I'm not aiming to be liked, but
Yeah.
you're in this together. You want to work together. So initially, I feel like they're more comfortable emailing me for the first while.
Yeah.
And so I will typically take high level like tickets just via email.
Mm.
We use Autotask, and we've integrated Autotask with SAP Business One. So we
Yeah.
use Autotask for our ticketing system. So people will email me. I'll either quickly reply, or I'll log a ticket and then I'll track that. And then eventually, when they're comfortable, I'll just be able to get them to either log tickets directly to our support desk, or I can log a ticket that maybe is a ticket that would be easy for our support desk to handle, or maybe I don't have time to do it. I can log that to our support queue.
All right.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
that's basically, they communicate with me for the first while.
Okay. Okay. So now that comes into the next question. When they have their first month end closing, are you going to be on site as well, or you just support them offsite?
It depends on their comfort level, and
Mm.
in a way, you have to let it go. Like, you know, in a way, you have to kind of let them experiment with it, and I really support them working in the test environment. I want them to get used to the period end closing utility. I have some
Yeah.
SAP documentation on year-end closing or period end closing processes, and I don't feel like it's something that people typically have a real difficult time with. So I'll
Mm.
usually just be remote. I'll do remote if they
Okay.
want me to come in, or if I'm close. If I have to travel, I won't typically do that on site, but I will definitely 100% support them. And it's definitely a question that comes up, like, how do I use the period end closing utility? How do I do my
Yeah.
accounts receivable? And how do I match it with the details? How do I do the inventory audit report and the details of that with the balance sheet? So,
Fiscal
yeah,
year change, fixed assets.
yeah, exactly. All those things that need to happen. So it's yeah. So I will definitely I'm really their lifeline for everything, including
Yeah.
support, and I'm heavily involved in support as well at Forgestic too. So I don't really see a project, and this leads into one of your questions later too, but I don't just walk away. I've never been able to. I don't like to just do it and then walk away. I really take a personal role and response. I feel a responsibility for my customers working now, developing, and I want to see them get acquired. I want to see, I've had lots of customers end up getting acquired. I've had lots of customers grow massively. I want to
Yeah.
see that, and I would do this if I wasn't getting paid. I just love to be able to help them be more efficient in any way that I can. So I like to stay involved through the whole process, support, consulting, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's a great mindset. All right. So now, after you do that, so do you have like a formal project closing that the project is delivered, there's a sign off, and then it's transitioned to your support team, even if you're a part of it? So how do you do it?
I have been, again, fortunately, lately the project managers will do their sign offs, and they
Okay.
will be the ones pushing me to finish off the lists of deliverables from the original scope. So what
Okay.
we'll usually do is we'll align together. We'll have the original scope, and there's a change log, like using SAP's change log from the accelerated implementation plan.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll use that and say what processes is there anything outstanding that needs to get done which fits the initial scope of the project, because
Mm.
you're going to get customers that they just don't feel like they want to close that project. And
Yeah.
I'm not disappearing. I just, the project manager just doesn't want to
Yeah.
talk to me about it anymore, like. So I'd be
How
like,
how
look,
did
I'm
you,
what. Sorry.
how do you how do you deal with it? Like I have this one project right here. Like it's like almost 2 years that they thought that I'm gonna disappear when I give it to our support team. So
Yeah.
maybe you can share something.
I just I'm I make sure that they know that I'm like, even if somebody else works with me in the support team or they contact the support team, I'm always available. And I just say we need to close the project because the scope of it is finished, and anything else you want to do, we will still do it. It's a psychological thing. But I think when
Yeah,
they
yeah,
trust that I've done it, like certain customers are just like, well, the original, we have to do it for this budget. And I'm like, look, like, this was not something that was promised or supposed to be in phase one. We just need to close it. And if you want me to scope and budget for that,
yeah.
then we'll do that. But I need the project manager to step back unless there's a reason to do it. And again, I think once you
Mm,
get people through that hump and they know that you're there, you reply,
mm,
and you're working on their projects.
yeah.
If, in Forgestic, we kind of have a rule, like under 10 hours, it's a service request. So we just leave it as a ticket. If it's over 10
Mm,
hours, then it's a small project, depending on the
okay.
size of it. So if it goes over 10 hours, like an EFT file or some custom development, then we could potentially need a project manager involved again.
Mm,
But if it's
mm,
below 10 hours, it's a service request. But that
yeah.
service request stays in their portal, and they can see the status of that. And I track that through our auto task system. And they know that I'm working on it, and they will be comfortable enough to communicate with me like, hey, what's going on with this? If I'm not, say I'm distracted with something else for a couple days and I don't get back to them
Yeah.
in the time frame they want. So it's partly about trust, I feel, but it's also just making sure they know and actually being there, because some project consultants, they don't want to talk. They just want to move on to the next project. And I know certain organizations, they don't want you to do any support because they're paying the support people to do it. But I feel, again, like with an SAP partnership, you're building these fields. You're building
Yeah.
these farmers' fields, and you need to take
Yeah.
care of those fields because it's your maintenance.
Yeah.
It's billable hours. You come and you get that crop. The crop grows, and you come harvest it, and then you come back in a little bit. There's another project. You can come harvest it, and there's always more
Yeah.
hours to be harvested from a well-maintained farmer's field. If farmer just walks away to the next field, yeah, it's going to grow for a little while, but it's going to get a lot of weeds in it. It's going to die,
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
it, right? So I use that analogy and that's how Forgestic has always looked at it. Like, we need to take care of the customers that are there, and we need to provide high level end user support and continuing development for them. And that is something that we prioritize. And it's also valuable. It's billable hours. So I don't walk away. And
Yeah.
even if
That's great.
even certain consultants certain consultants, they do the project with me, they take off, but I'm still that constant point of contact because I just do
Mm.
that. And yeah, I feel like that's always worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the sales after that, they're gonna without speaking about the sales, they're gonna, by word of mouth, they're gonna tell you, hey, Forgistic handles the customers well, and then you might
Mhm.
go check them and implement your system.
Yeah,
So
referrals. Yeah,
yeah, referrals. Yeah.
yeah. But
So
yeah,
yeah, all right. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it also ties into my previous, like, just selling mindset. Like, if I do see if I s- having constant contact with them, I know what they're looking for. So if there's a
Mm.
feature they're looking for or something that they've always struggled with, it really allows me to say, well, you know what, here I always have this like B1 up, like like a prisoner in a cell, right? He has like 1 day, 2 day, got that chalk thing, and I try to add those little chalk lines to try, if they don't have B1 up or something, I'll be like, oh, you know what? I could really solve that problem if I had B1 up or whatever, right? So I have it in my mind as I'm going, not in a negative way, but in a like, gosh, we talk about this dashboard or whatever that you've always wanted. And so me staying on top of that, I guess in a way it's like account manager, account executive, but
Mm.
I'm able to make suggestions that they'll take, that they'll really trust. They know that I have their best interest at heart. I'm not just like, I didn't just get a list and I'm coming back to try to sell them something they don't necessarily need. I can prove to them and demonstrate that their day-to-day operations would be better with B1 Up or whatever I'm trying to get them to buy, not to make me money, but to,
To
because
improve their
legitimately,
system.
yeah, they legitimately need it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
so
all
that's
right.
another
That's great.
benefit. Yeah.
All right. So now, Mike, we come down to my last question.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the current COVID pandemic in your area
I
and
mean,
the world? I mean,
Why, I
yeah.
cannot take responsibility for the world, and again, me trying to take things personally and breaking it down. I have to think small.
Mm.
I have to
Yeah.
focus on my day to day, focus on my family and what's happening here to keep myself sane. If people that are
Yeah.
focused on the world and you endlessly listen to the news and all this stuff, that that is anxiety, I think. Just seeing
Mm.
a ball of trouble and you have no thread to pull at it. Focus
Yeah.
small. I feel like I try to be grateful that I've already been working from home for 10 years. That's why my
Oh.
course was created. So I've been remote for 10, like, this is almost, I almost have no change whatsoever in what I'm doing besides having less, like, I would visit customers a little bit more often, but most of my support's remote. Most of the ongoing development and customizations remote. We work all across Canada, so I work with customers on the west
Mm.
coast, the east coast, and the center of
Yeah.
Canada as well. So in that regard, almost nothing has changed for me, and most of Forgestic. We have an office in we have offices across Canada, but our headquarters is in Montreal, where most of the consultants are. And we have, even in Montreal, been mostly working from home, working remotely, even though they can go into an office. I don't typically go into our office here. But yeah, so not too much has changed in that regard for us
All right.
business wise. But I definitely see maybe some capital investment for servers and stuff, is people are kind of getting a little more conservative with their cash in that regard. And some people are putting off projects, and some people are continuing with projects. Some people, there's almost no change. They continue to ask for the same requests or new stuff. So it's been, yeah, so far so good. Pretty, pretty steady. Knock on wood.
How about for your like UAT or something that you need to be on site? How do you deal with it right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not constantly going from project to project. So right now I'm doing couple projects. The one that's doing project realization right now, where we just did a blueprint. We're still dealing with the endpoint of the blueprint. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to do UAT and training. I will just have to hope that we were able to travel. I can drive down there, but it is in the US from where I am in Canada. So I don't have a good answer for that. I think UAT is going to have to be mostly remote, but I truly hope that with whatever physical distancing, I'm trying not to call it social distancing anymore. I want to think of it as physical distancing, because I'm physically distanced, but I want to remain socially connected.
Socially. Yeah.
So, hopefully the physical distancing will either have some protocols, or the curve or the herd immunity will be good enough that we'll be able to travel to the US again, and I'll still be able to continue doing some on-site support and training. Not being able to do that, it's going to be a much more difficult and slow user UAT process, and definitely with the go live, I would not feel as comfortable doing it that way. So I just hope by the time my realization is done in this case that some of those restrictions are lifted.
Yeah. All right, Mike. I think that ends our interview. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay. Yeah. See you later.